So as you may know already, my name is Kripabandhu Ghosh. I am one of the organizers of SAIL, and I welcome you all to this session. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Professor Arthur Dyevre. So if that is the correct pronunciation.
You can say Dyevre in English.
Dyevre, okay, Dyevre, who is a professor at University of Leuven, which is basically Catholic University at Leuven, right?
Right. There are two universities of Leuven. I mean, there's the KU Leuven, which is my university.
KU Leuven, yeah.
Also called the Catholic University of Leuven, and there is the French-speaking University of Louvain.
Okay. So from KU Leuven, Belgium, where his research areas include empirical legal studies, law and economics, and natural legal language processing. That is interesting. So he held research fellowships at various institutions across Europe, including the European University Institute in Florence, CEPT in Madrid, and Max Planck Institute for Comparative Public Law and International Law in Heidelberg. So his research is fully interdisciplinary. So he works with psychologists, economists, computer linguists, and political scientists. He was a principal investigator of the ERC-funded Authority project. His current research interests pertain to deceptive persuasion, behavioral comparative law, and intergroup biases in basically litigation. So welcome, Professor Dyevre, and I would request you to basically start your talk.
Right. Thank you very much, Kripa. I would like to, first off, extend my most thankful gratitude to you and the other organizers for having me and for the chance to address distinguished legal AI researchers and stakeholders in India. So kudos for organizing this great event. In my talk, I would like to discuss what I see as an important bottleneck in the progress of legal AI, namely the lack of human annotated data. And I would like to share some thoughts about ways to address this, about ways to eliminate this bottleneck, including by through fruitful collaborations with law schools and law students. As you indicated in your introduction, so I'm not a computer scientist nor a computer linguist. I have a background in empirical legal studies and law and economics, and the way I approach machine learning and natural language processing is as a way to further this research agenda. I also have take a keen interest in legal education reform in Europe. I'm a professor at a law school, and I'm interested in how to improve legal education, and this is also an aspect that is going to feature in my talk today. Going back to the bottlenecks, so this great challenge. This bottleneck, this challenge of legal AI stems from the crucial importance of supervised learning in advancing legal automation and legal AI applications. Many of the most important end-user tasks in legal AI require some kind of human label, data, or annotated corpora. And this is true for information retrieval, for document classification, for argumentation mining, or for tracking, overruling, distinguishing, and more generally jurisprudential change. Of course, there have been attempts to develop unsupervised approaches for these tasks, and some of these are quite useful. For example, if you think about document classification, document clustering techniques, the new distributed document clustering approaches have been developed. For example, you may have heard of top-to-vec or BERT topic, which allows you to cluster documents in unsupervised fashion, while also constructing word vectors. So you can, and this comes quite handy. I mean, it often works quite well to research documents and arrive at a general classification. Yet, even for document classification, we often want to classify documents in ways that respond to the intuitions of legal practitioners and legal experts. And so we have to start from their intuition, then from some kind of annotated data. In other fields, if you think, for example, about image recognition, progress has been driven by large annotated data sets, so such as ImageNet. ImageNet, on top of annotated images, has also been linked to an ontology. This comes quite handy for machine learning applications. In NLP, there also exist data sets, annotated data sets, which have served to, as benchmark to evaluate the performance of NLP models. If you turn to law, where is the legal equivalent of ImageNet in the legal field? Well, if you look at published research, what is striking is that, I mean, the typical data set are small or very small in published research. If you take, if you read, for example, the Law and Artificial Intelligence journal, I mean, most of the human annotated data set are quite small. Many data sets in law, in the legal field, many label data sets are proprietary, so they're not accessible to all researchers. Either you have to pay for them, or they're not interested in releasing them, and they only want to apply them for their use them for their own applications. Part of the problems come from the fact that annotating legal documents is expensive and time-consuming. Legal documents are often complex, they're difficult to read, and understanding them requires domain expertise, some degree of domain expertise. And this rules out an avenue that has often been used to construct annotated data set for AI applications, such as Mechanical Turk, so crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing and crowdsourcing platforms like Amazon Mechanical Turk is often a cheap and quick way to get annotations. But it seems to work well for relatively simple task that can be broken down in small units of work. I don't know of any attempts to measure the effectiveness of Turkers or of Amazon Mechanical Turk participants to annotate legal documents. I found a paper, an interesting paper, developing a web application for consuming and annotating legal discourse learning, where the researchers also say, at least the paper says, that they've also considered Amazon Mechanical Turk, yet in the paper they don't report any of these, any results of these annotations. So the results of the paper are based exclusively on annotations by the author themselves, and if I understand correctly, by law students. So that doesn't really seem to be an avenue. So what is the solution to then to address this bottleneck, this problem of like lack of dearth of annotated data in legal AI, in the legal field? One solution is to accept that we're never going to get a large data set and learn to work with small data sets. And one way to do this is to leverage the power of transformer models and transfer learning. So I'm sure you've heard about this Puppet, this Muppet, and about BERT. So BERT has been the great revolution in NLP in the last 3 years. In fact, the paper was released in 2018. And in the meantime, it's been cited more than 5,000 times, if not more. This has been really a huge breakthrough in natural language processing, because its architecture enables BERT to generate a much richer representation of word meaning than previous models, such as, for example, word embeddings based on word2vec. So whereas word2vec models construct type-based, generate type-based encodings, type-based representations of words. Thanks to its self-attention mechanism, BERT is able to generate token-based representations of words. And so BERT itself has generated extensions, has spawned a lot of extension and improvements. Distilled, whether it's like distilled models or domain-specific models trained on a domain-specific data set. One important question about BERT. Just briefly before, if you're not familiar with the idea of transfer learning, the idea between transfer learning is that you can use these huge transformer models, which have been trained on a very large corpora to tune their millions, if not billions, of parameters, and then you can use the knowledge, the knowledge from this model for local tasks. So you've learned a lot from your giant data set, and you can then fine-tune your model on your local data set, your local much smaller data set, leveraging the knowledge of your large transformer model. One question in law has been whether transfer learning actually works for law, because some early papers were showing no improvement in end user local tasks. But a recent paper has shown, with a more using a more challenging task, has shown that domain pre-training does work in the legal field. So if you can train the transformer model on a very large legal corpus, this can greatly improve the downstream performance on small local data set. And in this paper, it is shown that it improves result even with, like, there is on top of the casehold, the relatively large casehold data set used in the paper. They also show that there are performance gains even for a very small label data set on terms of service. So it does work. Domain pre-training does work in the legal domain, and this suggests that it is an avenue, one avenue to address this problem of dearth of data of label data in the legal domain. Progress in improvements in transformer models, in the architecture of transformer models, holds out further promise for law, because one problem with applications to the legal field is first that you cannot, you need a domain-specific, domain-specific transformer, because law has its own vocabulary. If you think, for example, about the word article, it's not used in law in the same way as it's used in scientific journals or in other contexts. So it's clear that if you want to learn the vocabulary of law, you need a
So I think there is some internet issue. Yeah.
I think we lost connection with him.
Yeah. Hopefully he will try to join. I'm checking. Yeah, I've just mailed him, but if it is internet problem, then possibly that will also not help. We don't have any other option. We have to wait and see and hope that he joins soon.
Kripa, do you have his contact or something?
I mailed him, but I don't have his phone number. I have to look up for it. But that will be an international call, right? So
No,
let's
I mean
see.
like over WhatsApp or something.
What's no. I don't have his contact number.
Okay.
Let me check.
Okay, one of the attendees is telling that maybe his battery went dead. So Ivan, do you have his Okay. Okay. Okay, no problem. Yeah. Yeah, but this might be his office number, right? So might be a landline or something.
Let us wait for a few minutes.
Maybe Kripa, can you try that?
Yes, I'm trying that.
Or maybe I don't know if in the attendees, if there is someone from Belgium or Europe. If any of the attendees is from Belgium or Europe, can they contact the speaker? Oh, he's back. Okay, I see. So I think you're muted, Arthur. You're muted.
You are muted. Yeah.
My apologies. So my connection now brutally shut down. So hopefully we can continue without any interruption.
Okay.
I'm going back to my presentation.
Yeah.
So I was saying that there have been two technical obstacles to the effective application of pre-trained transformer models to the legal model. And one was the absence of domain-specific pre-trained models. And in the meantime, that has been addressed, at least for the English language. There now exist freely available legal BERTs. And I expect to see legal BERTs and transform models developed for other languages in the near future. Another obstacle what stems from arises from the fact that legal documents are usually relatively long. If you think about judicial opinions or contracts, these are long documents. But the architecture and the self-attention mechanisms used by transformer models like BERT could only handle short windows, and so short short sequences. This is because the the complexity of the model, the task, was quadratic. When you use full attention, is quadratic over over sequence length. So researchers have looked for turnaround using sparser attention mechanisms, so as to construct transformer models that can handle much longer attention windows. And so, for example, Big Bird, which was released earlier this year by Google, combines random, global, and local attention in a sparse attention model. You could also say a smart attention mechanism, which allows Big Bird to handle longer sequences, and so longer documents. There have been no legal applications yet, but I expect that many future transformer applications, pre-trained transformer models for law, will draw on the architecture of models like BERT, because in law you need the ability to handle long sequences. So as these technical obstacles are being cleared, we should get much better performance on many downstream end user legal tasks using small data sets. So this is certainly a very promising avenue to address this shortage, this dearth of human labeled data. So this should certainly be part of the solution, but it cannot be the entire solution, because even I think with transformer and transfer learning, we're not going to get there. So this will take us some way, but not all the way. So we definitely need more human labeled data. And it's here that I want to return to the topic of legal education, because I think legal AI researchers can create win-win collaborations with law schools. There's been a lot of money pouring into legal tech, and law schools, as the legal industry is being gradually transformed, so law schools and legal educators are realizing that the job market for law students is changing, and that they have to adjust legal education accordingly. There's a lot of talk, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about the T-shaped lawyer. So future lawyers need more than only legal knowledge. They also need to be to understand how technology works. They need to understand how analytics work. They need to learn to work with computer engineers, with data scientists, and so on. And so some legal educators at law schools in Europe, and the more, I would say, advanced, enlightened law schools, where there is also already more interest in legal tech, legal educators have been thinking about how to impart, a sense of, digital intuition in law students, to teach them how the technology works, even teach them some coding. And this is part also of a more general sentiment that in Europe, legal education badly needs reforms, because the way it approaches legal education is really antiquated. But this also creates opportunities for legal AI researchers and for collaborations with law school. You have to think about, legal education in Europe is big in terms of student numbers. There are several hundreds of thousands of law students in Europe, across thousands of law schools. There is a very low instructor-student ratio, so it's not uncommon for law professor at a law school in Europe to have 300 or 400 or sometimes 800 students in the room. So and that means that teaching largely boils down to the ex cathedra form. So there is relatively little interaction, and to the point where even students do little in the way of honing purely legal skills, like for example learning to read a contract, read judicial decisions, do it quickly, skim through a document. So if we're talking about, even before talking about the T-shaped lawyer, even like, the law schools are often not even producing good I-shaped law students. And there is an opportunity for working with AI researchers on annotating datasets, because annotating datasets can be a way for law students both to understand the technology, how algorithms work, how machine learning work, how supervised machine learning works, how legal automation works, while also honing key legal skills. And here I would like to talk to you about something you could see as an experiment or a proof of concept for this idea. So in Leuven, for the past 2 years, I've had a tutorial where students have worked on the development, they've worked on the development of a new law classifier. This is an important task because you have to think about, European countries that are member of the European Union. They are supposed to apply European Union law, and state officials as well as courts. Yet we have, there is a big question mark about the extent to which national courts across EU member states, whether it's Belgium, Denmark, France, Spain, the Czech Republic, or Poland, about the extent to which they take EU law really seriously. And if you try existing databases, it's very hard to retrieve, because they use very primitive search engines, and so search information retrieval methods. It's very hard to get a sense of the extent to which these courts take EU law seriously. So if you want to retrieving domestic decisions making use of EU law is very difficult. Hence the idea of developing a classifier to automate this task by using human input in the form of annotated domestic decisions. So teaching at a Belgian Dutch-speaking law school, so we focused on Belgian Dutch language decisions. And in the first year we had 50 student annotators. This year we've had 72. So all these students, we first trained them. Law students, of course, these are here we're talking about third-year law students. So they've already have at least 2 years or 2 years and a half of legal studies. So they have at least already read some judicial opinions or other legal documents. They have a certain familiarity with the legal system and the language of law, at least Belgian law. Now, the first step is to further train these students to annotate documents. So we have a training phase first in this tutorial experiment. And so in the training phase, they annotate decisions we've already annotated, so that we can score and measure the ability of students to replicate expert annotations. And then once they've completed the training stage, we give them unlabeled decisions, which they have to annotate according to an annotation scheme we have developed. And also during the training, they also get some gold documents, which have already been annotated by experts, but which the students don't know about, so that we can, in the process, verify the quality of their work. On top of this, every document, every decision was annotated by 2 students. So we could also compute some annotator consistency. And finally, when there were discrepancies, the students had to go through a reconciliation stage. So the 2 annotators would then, a separate session, discuss the annotations and come to and settle their differences to come to a master version of the annotated document. So, and after that, so the next step is, is the machine learning part, which is done by the supervisors. So in this case, we use transfer learning. These are Dutch decisions, so we used a pre-trained Dutch language BERT model. Unfortunately, it's not domain specific. There's no low Dutch transformer model yet. We are working on training one, and that will improve, certainly improve in the performance of our EU-law classifier. So in the end of the course, we have an EU-law classifier. The first round of fine-tuning delivered good performance, but it's a difficult task because we have realized that the percentage of domestic decisions citing EU law is relatively low. So it's probably around 2%, something like this. So if you want to deploy, the model, if you want the model to go into production and serve as a tool for practitioners, you need to have very high recall as well as good precision. So for this experiment, we used there's a German startup, TACTOG, that allowed us to use their platform, so students could log in and annotate the document one after the other. So we also use Python scripts to automate some tasks, for example, like to monitor progress in annotation task and then redistribute the documents. Organize the reconciliation tasks, because students were not. There were two annotators per document, but the annotators first annotated the documents independently. Asking the students about their experience, I found it very promising. So this is actually the feedback we got from one student, and he was saying that he liked the course both because he was inspirational, contributing to a research project and advances in legal AI was something that motivated him, this student says. But he also, and this is very important because I think it's a big selling point to law schools, the exercise also made him a better lawyer, at least, if I understand, like a lawyer as being primarily about black letter law, because in this course, in this experiment, annotators had to go through a lot of decisions. So they really had to hone this skill. And grading was partly based on, both the quality and the quantity of the annotations. So this is a way that is this makes legal teaching more interactive, also more rewarding, and helps really students to hone basic legal skills. At a law school, I mean, if I'm honest about my law school, I mean, we have a lot of students. There's a lot of ex-cathedra teaching, and there are not many courses where students really learn by doing. So this is one of the rare classes where there are this chance. And I think this shows us the potential of developing this approach more systematically. So what we want to do is to develop an integrated app where you can, I mean, with a broader scope, I mean, where you can train, classifiers or other supervised models for various legal tasks. Can be contract review, the terms of service, and it can also it could also consider a broader range of annotation types, whether it's entity recognition, arguments, overruling, distinguishing. And so the idea would be to create a notation ready task, and then you can tell instructors and teachers at law school, okay, so if you want, if you want something, you want something that doesn't require you a lot of teaching preparation and teaching work, but really engages students, law students, and law students' legal skills and abilities, you can use this app and work on this annotation task. And this will save you both time and while imparting important knowledge and know-how to your students. So the app would also come with a scoring system and a system, as we did in our tutorial, with a system of goal documents and scoring for the quality and quantity of annotations. We may also think about, as a possible extension, as a certification platform where you could go to a website, for example, and practice your these basic legal skills on reading and analyzing contract clauses, legislation, or terms of service. So with this, I come to a conclusion. So I think I see supervised learning as key, as essential to progress in legal AI. And while I do believe that transformer and transfer learning are an important part of the solution, we need more label data sets. And I think there are a great opportunity to create win-win collaborations with law schools to create new data sets. This is also important because the challenge in disrupting the legal domain and in bringing AI to the legal industry, to legal practitioners, as well as to law students and legal educators, is also a cultural challenge. And I think these collaborations can also help with the cultural elements, because if lawyers don't learn to use technology, don't learn to work with computer scientists and computer linguists, technological progress won't be enough. So you need also people to learn to work with technology, and I think this can help in this regard. I thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for the wonderful talk. So we have plenty of questions. Maybe we can take them one after another. So I see a question by Ivan. The question is, as of the student annotators, this is quite standard approach in NLP, but annotating is mostly very demanding and boring. How do you motivate your students, except for paying them or basically giving them some credit?
Well, I think one element of, one motivational element is, contributing to, an open source, public good AI project. So I think that's an important element. I think the second element is, well, I mean, in my experience, students, in fact, enjoyed annotating. I mean, of course, you should not do like, you should do relatively short sessions. They should be interspersed also with, for a talk, for example, about AI and about AI technology and some like reflections. But I think students enjoyed the task itself of like working on a legal document, trying to understand its meaning, and trying to find where the conceptual structure appears, which we're looking for as part of the task. So in my experience from this course is that students were not, it was not hard to motivate students. And I think this also has something to do with the fact that they come from a background, I describe legal education in Europe as being, about ex-cathedra teaching, about this low instructor-student ratio. In fact, law school is quite boring, generally speaking, in Europe. Students sit passively, so they don't really learn by doing, and in this course they could learn by doing. So again, I think this is also an important selling point. So my experience is that students were not bored. On the contrary, they were quite motivated.
I hope we can do the same for the Indian law schools also in some time. We have a question from Prathamesh. The question is, what are the types of classes you used for EU law classifier?
Well, I mean, this class, because officially in Leuven, when I joined my law school, there was no one was talking about legal AI at the time. So I joined the law school officially as the chair of jurisprudence, so legal theory. So officially, this is a jurisprudence class. But the idea is that the class serves as a way to introduce students to new ways to do legal research. And so that's how it is presented. I think presentation, the way you present the annotation task, I mean, there should be part of, a meaningful message about the contribution of the task to advances in the legal field and legal AI.
So I think the question is about the classes as in a classifier. I mean, the classes pertaining to a classification task.
All right. You mean how we characterize? So the question is about the characterization of the NLP task, right?
Yes, like in a classification task, we have some classes into which we need to classify a data point. So I
Right.
think the question is, what kind of classes I mean, did you have in the data set?
Okay, I mean, this is, I mean, we have a notation system which allows both to treat the task as a simple classification task. Does the decision refers in some way to EU law, or does it not? Or you can also approach the task as an entity recognition task, which in fact is the approach that in terms of performance works best. So we had, in total, we had 7 tags, so 7 possible annotations. One is whether the parties use, invoke EU law. One was whether the court considers the arguments of the party about EU law. Another was whether the court refuses to consider EU law. Another was whether the court decides to submit an interlocutory question to the European Court of Justice or refuses to do so. And there was a tag, no EU law in the document. And this is the tag that allows us also like to handle the question also as a simple yes/no classification, binary classification task. But the entity recognition approach is what works best in terms of performance.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So Ivan has another question. Was your annotation span level annotations or document level, off document level? I'm not sure what to say.
All right. These are the annotations are sentence level. Maybe I can show you the annotation platform. So you can see from the annotation platform that students tagged, this is in Dutch, sorry, but so what is tagged is where the decision refers to EU law. So it's sentence level, and so that's because it's sentence level, that means it can also be treated as an entity recognition, handled as an entity recognition task.
Okay, so since you showed the system, we have a question from Shubham. What tools you have been using for annotating the data, the legal data? Can you share your experience of working with open source tools? Yeah, as a continuation, I think who can access your trained models? Have you open sourced that as well?
Right. I mean, first, I mean, we so for the annotation, the platform. So we contacted a German startup, Tactog, and they allowed us to use their platform free of charge in exchange for making the data public. So if you have, a public project and you want to running on Tactog, or I mean, you can also, I think, directly download our data from Tactog. So all our data, all the data we have generated is public and can be found on Tactog.
Now, Tactog, you mean, right? So tagtog.net, Tactog.
Right. Yes.
As you can see on the screen.
Yeah, that's what you see on. Yes, tactog.net.
Okay.
Now, if you're talking about also the the Python code for training the models, I mean that's not yet public, but we'll make it public certainly when we try to publish something.
Okay, that will be great. Vishal has a question: how to use transfer learning in law, especially when there is a break in legal policy, leaving the data set 1 as redundant. So I think is okay.
Right.
But, okay.
Well, I don't think that when there's you mean a break in the policy, it could be a court overruling its previous case law, or it could be a new piece of legislation. But yeah. I think when it comes to transfer learning, I think generally speaking, it doesn't matter, because new legislation is going to use, if you it's going to use largely the same vocabulary. So if your pre-trained model has been trained on a large enough corpus, I mean, there's no reason it shouldn't work. So when legislators enact new legislation, they don't reinvent legal language. So there's no reason why it should not work, even when changes are quite dramatic.
Yeah.
Legally speaking.
Yeah. Rajeshwari has a question. You mentioned that small is beautiful and getting huge data set for legal is difficult. In this scenario, how would you go about transfer learning for legal domain? I think you addressed this already, but yeah, but that was mostly about, the content of your talk. But if you can answer, if you want to answer this question.
Sorry, could you run this by me again? Because I'm not sure I understood the question.
The question is, you mentioned that, basically the title of your talk, right. I mean, small is beautiful. Somewhere you basically, use this, and getting huge data set for legal is difficult. In this scenario, how do you go about with transfer learning for legal domain?
Right. I was saying small is beautiful is because, at some point for downstream end user task, you need human label data. So now constructing large human label data sets is expensive and difficult. And I would say even with the law students, we're not going to get like millions of annotated legal documents. But you don't need to have millions. And here lies the importance of transfer learning and pre-trained models. I mean, these pre-trained models, they're not trained on label data. In fact, the training isn't entirely unsupervised. So you want a giant corpus as big as possible, but it doesn't need to be annotated. That's actually what is great about these transformer models. So they learn from these unlabeled data. They learn basically the vocabulary of the corpus. So it constructs transformer models construct token-based representations of words, and this is then transferred to the local task, where you need for the local task, for the downstream end user task, you do need labeled documents, but you don't need as many.
Okay, so question is, how many levels of annotation did you have? How did you come up with annotation tags?
Well, the levels, of the annotation were based partly on previous research, because there had been attempts in the past, for example, in the UK, to map, empirically, and people did that manually. So they went through volumes and volumes of case books and case reports to determine, to identify each and every published UK court decision applying EU law. And when doing so, they came up like with a number of categories, which such as whether the parties raised a new law question, and so that's how these decisions were categorized in previous research. So assuming that these are the most interesting categories, we drew on this previous research to establish our annotation scheme.
So we have come to, almost to the close of the session, but I will quickly take two last questions. One, since you are including student annotations, how do you maintain the quality? And second question is, can you talk about the evaluation parameters in the task?
Right. So first, how you maintain quality. So you can track inter-annotator consistency, in real time. So in this class, the students are graded on the basis of both the quantity of annotations, so how many words they skim through, as well as the quality. And we measure quality, not only using the inter-annotator measure, but also using goal documents. So goal documents are documents that have already been annotated by expert annotators. And so these are distributed randomly to student annotators. And so if students deviate significantly from the goal document, it means they're not, quality is not good. If their annotations are very close to the goal document, then it means that quality is good. And so students know that we're also considering the quality of their annotations. They don't know which documents measure this, but this is a way to to address these challenge. And the other question was
evaluation parameter.
You mean
the task? Evaluation parameters of the task, like how do you? So I think.
You don't mean the parameters of the machine learning model?
I'm not sure. That is not asking the question. So I just, read out the question. Evaluation parameters of the task. I'm not sure what the question is. So like you already talked about the quality of annotation, right? So
yes.
That is there, and you didn't talk about any machine learning task in general, but you only motivated
right.
the use of transfer learning and how generation of more annotated data can help people to actually use the transfer learning models.
What you could think of, as an extension or in something you also
right. He clarified his question, like he said that numbers you achieved from supervised learning. So did you do any supervised learning and checked how good the learning was?
Right. Yes, you mean some supervised learning. I mean, as I showed in the pipeline, when as showed in the, I can show you the pipeline again. After the students annotated the document, so we trained several machine learning models, some using transfer learning, others not. The best results, so far were using transfer learning and using specifically Rob BERT, which is a BERT model for Dutch. It's not domain specific. It's not been trained on Dutch legal documents. So it delivers the best performance, although we think that a Dutch language transformer model trained specifically on legal documents would work better, but there's not one available yet. So we're working on training one. This is part of an ongoing project. Yes, so that we did train some machine learning supervised classifiers, and we presented the results to the students. Maybe a related question is whether we would want the students to actually do some of the training themselves. For example, you could consider like a collab session, providing students with the data. I mean, the one problem with collab sessions is that when it comes to NLP and machine learning is that it takes a lot of time, often for computation. So it's not easy to do that, in a classroom environment. Or maybe you may want to tell the students to start the training and then bring back the results for the next class. That could be a solution, but yeah, there is the computation time issue. But it's sure. I mean, I certainly believe that if students can see the training process, the training code, it could further enhance, motivation and a sense of like really having a hand in the research and the process.
Okay, so thank you very much for the wonderful talk, and thank you very much for asking all the questions. So thank you very much to all the attendees. We will now close the session.